The views and opinions of this program are those of the hosts, guests, and callers. There is substantial risk of loss in trading futures and options, which you should carefully consider prior to trading. Well, joining us now as we take a look at the weather and some of the impacts we're seeing not only in the grain markets, but some of the other outside markets as well that have been very volatile. We are joined today for analysis by Jim Roemer with Best Weather Inc. joining us here on the program. And Jim, it is great to talk with you again, sir. Thanks so much for joining us. Hope you're doing well.
Thanks, Jesse. Don't mind my crazy colors here. I'm a little colorblind, so nice to join you.
Well, with the green hat and the red shirt, you're playing both sides of the fence here for the markets. Let's go with that. How's that sound?
Right.
The bull and the bear. We can.
Okay.
You're doing that. You're color coordinating nicely. Well, let's talk here. And first, let's start with wheat. This wheat market has been rallying by the sound of it on weather concerns in the U.S. and in Europe. So give us your thoughts here on this wheat trade right now.
Yes, we see here on the left on Wednesday here, April 24th, we broke above previous resistance, still in a longer-term bear market, obviously, with huge supplies. But we've had near a record short position in the market. And it's been dry in the Ukraine. The critical time is May and June. It's been dry in Kansas and Oklahoma in response to El Nino weakening. But if La Nina does not form until the fall, there's still a chance to recover some of this wheat crop around the world. Seasonally, wheat prices go higher relative to corn this time of the year. If it wasn't for rains coming to Ukraine in 10 to 15 days and Kansas getting some rains, not a drought breaker, but some, I would be much more bullish wheat against corn. So it's a pretty volatile market right now. A lot of weather to be watching in multiple countries.
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, Ukraine, that's one of the big dryness concerns. Let's talk about that a little bit. And I'm sharing some charts on the video feed you shared with us as well from one of your recent newsletters. And talk a little bit first about some of this dryness in Ukraine and really in many of the wheat areas in Europe.
Yeah, so you can see there in red, the rainfall the last 6 weeks has been below normal, well below normal, covering about maybe 30 to 40%, 50% at most of the Ukraine and Western Russian wheat areas, but it's only isolated. So as long as rains come by May and June, then the crop can still be decent in parts of Russia and Ukraine. Typically with El Nino wheat conditions, you don't see droughts like the 2010 drought in Russia that helped wheat prices rise 50%. That extended all through July and August. Where still weak El Nino conditions or neutral El Nino, I would expect there'll be some improvement as we get into the month of May.
Now, looking as well, the U.S., you mentioned that too, and I know a lot of chatter from Kansas farmers right now about some of the dryness concerns there and the lack of soil moisture. Talk about the U.S. factor here.
Yeah, so again, these charts are in my newsletter, Weather Wealth. It goes out to farmers and traders around the world with trading strategies. And I kind of mentioned this to my clients early on this week that we may see some concern for the wheat crop. Indeed, there to the right, the crop has dropped a little bit in ratings from this dryness. The question is, where are we going to be 3 to 4 or 5 weeks from now? And I don't think we're going to tank down to like those 2011 La Nina levels you see there or 2013 in which we could rally 30 or 40%. I don't think it's going to happen. I think we're going to kind of stabilize the wheat crop here within a week or two with some rains coming here, as you see, as we get into the month of May there on the left in green. That's kind of the forecast coming up probably in a week or two.
Well, thinking about that, how does that shape up for the U.S. Corn Belt here? Obviously, planting season getting going, and I know there's a lot of folks who are thinking about that along with watching South American weather here too. That's kind of playing itself into the corn and soybean markets. Talk about the corn and soybean markets and some of the weather impacts there for us.
Sure, Jess. So I'm a little bit surprised that considering that disease issues in Argentina will lower their crop below 50 million metric tons. I think we were around 60 million metric tons was the original estimate 3 or 4 months ago. I'm surprised that wheat or corn hasn't rallied as much because we also have the second corn crop in northern Brazil being hurt. So you have kind of a battle zone between the bearishness of the drought breaking there in red, up to 2 to 4 inches of rain in Iowa and parts of Missouri and Illinois in the next 2 weeks. Kind of bearish new crop corn, good planting weather coming up versus the problems in South America. It's possible you could see July corn rally against December corn if we have some demand the next few months as the problems in South America actually begin to be realized by the trade.
Well, and thinking about South America too, and just watching some of the dryness that's a big key because there's some pretty important growing areas here with this safrina corn, especially in Brazil. Not to mention the disease issues you said in Argentina, but thinking
Right.
about Brazil here, I mean, the wet season showers. It sounds like they've effectively kind of shut off, haven't they, Jim?
Yeah, it certainly looks that way. So there in red, you'll see below normal rainfall about, I don't know, 20 or 30% of rainfall the last 6 weeks. It's hurt some of the coffee crops down there. It's beginning to hurt the second corn crop. The market's kind of yawning at this right now because of the stronger dollar and because we have really, really big supplies. The subscribers to my newsletter, Weather Wealth, last summer, in the middle of this drought and corn is $6, I said, this is kind of hogwash. We're going to see some important rains in late June and July in the Corn Belt. And things turned out rosy. And because of that and the stronger dollar and weak Chinese demand, we've really been in a bear market since the end of last summer. This could potentially help demand shift to the United States here as we get into the late spring, the problems in South America.
Well, you mentioned coffee in there. I want to talk about some of these outside markets too.
Sure.
I know coffee has been volatile as of late. Gold's been volatile. Cocoa, lumber, you name it. So many of these different markets have been very volatile. Talk to me first about coffee. What are some things you're watching there?
Yeah, so I think one of my highest confidence trade that I recommended to my Weather Wealth clients at Best Weather, my website, was being long Robusta coffee 2 or 3 weeks ago in the worst drought really in 100 years in Vietnam, and short call options, very sophisticated, in Arabica coffee. In other words, really the cheaper kind of instant coffee, we call it, Robusta coffee, like Folgers, for example, is grown in Indonesia and Vietnam and far northeastern Brazil. It's the Robusta London coffee market that's exploding, whereas the Arabica coffee market, traded in the New York Exchange, has not rallied nearly as much. So we're seeing spreading activity. Basically, we are seeing really Robusta coffee outperform the Arabica coffee market. That's kind of what this chart has been suggesting here for quite some time.
Well, I went through a lot of charts real quick here on the video feed, but thinking about coffee, cocoa, gold, all those different commodities here that have been so volatile. I mean, eh, part of me has wondered if a lot of that fund managed money has been going into some of those softs and outside markets and staying away from things like grains here as of late, Jim. Just maybe as a hedge against inflation, or taking some of these markets parabolic. I mean, your thoughts on just how some of the money has flowed here as of late?
Yeah, it's surprising because with higher interest rates, money's flowed into bonds over the last maybe 6 to 12 months. We've seen the stock market recover nicely on this original fear that raising interest rates 2 years ago was going to pressure the market. No, the economy is doing very strong. Obviously, people in rural areas maybe are not benefiting as much as other people are, and I hope certainly the economy strengthens in rural America more than it has. But it's surprising to me because there's so much money going to the stock market as well as bonds that commodities have also gone up, like gold's rallied sharply, silver. Cocoa, there's been an entire weather play, a 400% move on disease issues from El Nino and warming oceans in cocoa over the last 8 months. Well, my concern is a stronger dollar could affect some of these commodities adversely, particularly if we have good weather for grains this summer. The stronger dollar, because rates are not going to probably fall like the Fed had suggested a few months ago, with the economy really, and inflation really steaming back here. If rates stay high, that strengthens the dollar and could put pressure on markets like gold and silver, for example.
Well, Jim, fascinating thoughts, and we packed a lot into a short amount of time. And I know you mentioned this too. If folks want to see charts like we shared and really look at your analysis and more, I know they can find you very easily at your website, can't they, Jim?
Yeah, thank you, and hope everybody has a great spring and summer. After 2 or 3 years of back-to-back droughts in parts of the Western Corn Belt and Northern Plains, I think with this weakening El Nino situation, we'll probably have decent crops this summer. The big concern, the last thing, is that the oceans and everything is warming so much. We've had the fourth record warm winter in a row. The wild card is, typically with weakening El Ninos, as long as La Nina does not form, which I think may hold off to September, October, we should have good corn and soybean crops this summer. But it's the warming oceans and the Arctic melting, that could throw a wrench into all this and bring some heat this summer. I'll be watching it very, very closely, and whether or not that affects corn and soybean production as well as wheat.
Well, we'll have to stay close with you and have you back on for another conversation. In the meantime, folks can go to bestweatherinc.com for more. Jim Roemer with Best Weather Inc. Thanks for joining us here today. Appreciate the time.
Thanks, Jess. Always enjoy it.
Make sure to subscribe to the Market Talk YouTube channel. You can watch our latest interviews with top market analysts in the country, find bonus content, and much more. It's easy. Just go to youtube.com/@MarketTalkAg and hit the subscribe button. Or you can search for Market Talk Ag on YouTube.